I acknowledge the Kombumerri people as the traditional custodians of this land. I pay respects to elders past, present and emerging.
The Kombumerri people means the saltwater people, and we are named that obviously because we are along the coastline, so we depended traditionally on the ocean for our food, and along the Nerang River where we primarily resided, so that's why we're called the Kombumerri people, the saltwater people.
So there's 6 family groups descended from the applicable ancestor on the Kombumerri country. So Waru, our matriarch, she was the applicable ancestor, and from her 6 groups are derived. My clan's group, the Kombumerri people, Uninformed is the language they speak. So it covers a wide area. It goes over to Kuri Jargon, that's Kuri's New South Wales blackfella, Jargon's land. So Kuri Jargon over the Tweed River, over the border there, out to Binnaburra, the high country, Binnaburra area, Bow Desert, I think it's Mount Lindsay out west, I think. And then wraps around, including Tambourine, to south of Gugingan Mob, traditionally Logan area, Bullingen to the south, and then over the Kombumerri River to where we are.
There are many significant sites around the Gold Coast that are important to the Kombumerri people. One would be the Bora Ring along the highway in Miami. Another would be Burley Mountain behind us here, where women's business was traditionally carried out, and Talabudra Creek, of course. Primarily to me, the most important place would be the Nerang River, where my mob traditionally inhabited, and it's just a really important area I feel very culturally connected with.
Well, it's like everywhere else, when an invasion came, they were deprived of their culture, the same as everyone else, because they weren't allowed to practice their culture, speak their language, and all that goes with that, because we were considered to be, savages really. Luckily there were some people they remained here. As long as you were perceived to be walking as a white person in white society, it was okay. Always there was a cloud over their identity, and always they could be removed if it comes to the attention of any official. And prior to that, of course, we had the black policemen that used to actually round up people or put down, quell any uprising, if you like. So we were denied all those things that were previously our culture, so we weren't allowed to practice any of that.
I couldn't really tell you too much about the Kombumerri students within the region. At Miami State High School, we actually don't have any Kombumerri traditional owners. My major role that I have as part of the Indigenous community is primarily what my involvement is with Indigenous students in the schools. So a lot of what I do for students living in a metropolis like the Gold Coast is providing them with opportunities to connect more with their culture and providing opportunities for them to empower themselves with their understanding of their nationality and their identity. What has happened with the Kombumerri people, as it has with a lot of other traditional owners from everywhere across Australia, specifically on the east coast of Australia, is that this displacement and this cut of connection has essentially led to a lot of them growing up having that lack of connection to their identity as an Indigenous person has a really massive effect on them, and for some people that can lead to a lot of issues, especially with intergenerational trauma, having it carried through so many generations of Indigenous people, is that you get a lot of people like myself who understand their connection to their Aboriginality is something that is important, but not necessarily something that is really easy for us to deal with.
I am a Kombumerri woman and I speak the Yugambeh language, and the Gold Coast is made up of all different mobs, however we all speak Yugambeh. People have generalised this term, the Yugambeh people, so they can come onto Kombumerri country and say, oh well, I'm a Yugambeh person, but that doesn't necessarily mean that they're Kombumerri, so that's where these lines are blurred. I have an issue with it because I believe you acknowledge whose land you're on, and that's the whole point of an acknowledgement of country, and that's where the term Yugambeh comes up. So it's common to say, oh, I acknowledge the Yugambeh speaking peoples, which doesn't even make sense. It should be, I acknowledge the Kombumerri people if you're on our land who speak the Yugambeh language. I wouldn't go out to Mulunjali country and say I'm a local because I speak Yugambeh.
I don't think it's an accurate, rational description of the people of the southeast of the Gold Coast area and its surroundings. It's like saying people in Central America, South America, the Spanish people, because a lot of them might have Spanish as their official language. It's not being accurate to the literal clans group or traditional people that live there. So I have heard of it. I don't like it, and it gets used and tossed around, but it's not accurate.
So mate, what's your name?
Hezekiah.
Hezekiah? Cool, I'm Finn. How would you believe Currumbin is protecting the culture of the Kombumerri people?
Well, we dance every day at Currumbin, and we pass down our culture through generations by song and dance or by word of mouth, and then that just keeps it strong. Yeah.
There's so much that we can do as both Indigenous and non-Indigenous people alike to allow access to and empowerment of Indigenous people and Indigenous culture. And I think the big thing that needs to happen first is to ask questions. So much of what has happened to Indigenous people has been this development of assumptions about what Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people need and want rather than actually asking them.
I absolutely do believe times are changing. You go back 200 years ago and we couldn't identify as being Aboriginal, let alone Kombumerri, which I think is so powerful and really important for the continuation of the Kombumerri people and wider Aboriginal culture in general.